We're less than a week away from LSU football's opener in the Superdome against Florida State, but we're actually even closer to an LSU quarterback decision that could come out as early as in just about an hour or so. So we'll break down that and so much more on today's edition of Locked on LSU.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, whatever that might be. You can also find us on YouTube as well. So if you prefer to watch your podcast, you can just throw us up on your smart TV or on your phone. You can watch us on the go. Locked On LSU on YouTube. I'm Caroline Fenton, and I'm your host, as I am every day. I graduated from LSU. I've been covering LSU football for 6 or 7 years now, and I am now a sports talk radio host in Nashville, Tennessee. So the biggest decision that we've all been waiting for, because we got a little bit of taste of college football this past weekend in week 0. And let me tell you, it felt so nice to be able to just sit down on the couch on a Saturday and hear the voices of Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler and, hear college football on my TV. But I do have to say, it just wasn't the same. It's just not the same. Week 0 just doesn't hit the same like it normally does. So while we got a little bit of a pregame, a little bit of a taste of what college football season might feel like, I'm ready for week 1. Give it to me. We're only a few days away. But we could be, honestly, even minutes away from a quarterback decision. So Brian Kelly has a press conference at noon, and this is coming out just before noon. So I'm going to give you all of my... And I really do predict that Brian Kelly will announce the quarterback decision when he speaks to the media at noon. And he spoke to the media on Saturday this was on Thursday, after their scrimmage. And when he was asked about a quarterback decision timeline, this is what he had to say.
We'll have it wrapped up by, we're going to start to exchange scout teams probably Friday of this week. We'll get a peek. We'll use Friday, Saturday, and next Tuesday as the 3 bonus days for Florida State. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, again, another 3 days for Florida State, which would be your normal Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in a typical week. So as long as we've got our decision made by, the end of the weekend here, and then we make some kind of announcement, whether it's, Monday or Tuesday of next week, we feel like we'll be in a pretty good position.
Okay, so a whole bunch of fluff there, kind of their intentions throughout the week of, you get kind of 3 bonus days to prepare for this first game, just because whenever you get into the regular season, Monday's film day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, to really prepare for that next week. So LSU and every other team in the country playing week 1 has those extra days to be able to prep. So he said either Monday or Tuesday of this week, a quarterback announcement will be made. Now, like I said, Brian Kelly does speak to the media at noon Central Time today. So I really do think that a decision could be made. Now, kind of looking back at this past week of practice, it's my understanding, and like I said, if you're new here, I'm not local in Baton Rouge. I'm not able to go to practice and see for myself. But from my understanding, it was really evenly split on Saturday. That Jaden Daniels took majority of the first team reps, and then in hurry-up periods, kind of in that red zone period, Garrett Nussmeier took a majority of those reps. So it really was equally split. And Jaden Daniels was really kind of showing off his ability to throw the deep ball. He had a 40-yard bomb to Kyron Lacey. He worked a lot on the deep balls on Saturday, per what I've read, per my research. So, that's been a big concern of, I think, a lot of people is not Jaden Daniels' arm strength, because he undoubtedly has arm strength, but more so the accuracy. He can shoot at 40 yards downfield, but is he going to be able to hit his target? And I think that's what we've been able to see on Saturday. And I feel like if you are going to make an announcement about who the starting quarterback will be on Monday, On Saturday, you should really start to see that come to fruition. That if you have a guy in mind that in 2 days we feel comfortable enough to make a decision that he's our starter, you should probably see that guy kind of start to emerge as, oh, he's taking majority of the first team reps, or, he's playing with the ones. And then there's a very obvious divide, or maybe not so obvious, but it's at least clear enough to be able to say, okay, I can kind of assume that this guy's going to be the starter. And it's my understanding that on Saturday, that was not necessarily the case. Now, does that mean that they still don't know who's going to be the starter? I don't think so. I think it's more so showing us that it's going to be a quarterback competition throughout the rest of the season. That it's, there's going to be a starter named for Florida State. Obviously, you're going to have to. We're less than a week away. But the quarterback competition, in my opinion, based off of what we've seen so far in practice, very evenly split first teams, and also based off of what Brian Kelly had to say last week.
Such a close battle at the quarterback position. Is there a chance we would see both guys against Florida State, or are you just going to ride with QB1 and that's it?
I don't know that I have an answer for that question, as much as I think we need to make the decision, start who it is that we feel gives us the best chance to win, but know that both of them are quarterbacks that can help us win the SEC. So however that plays out, it's really hard for me to answer that question looking forward, but I think in the moment we feel really good about both of those quarterbacks.
So right now they feel really good about both quarterbacks. And I think something that he said there kind of showed to me that just because either Jaden or Garrett will be named the starter against Florida State, that does not mean that that player will be the starting quarterback for LSU throughout the entirety of the season. And it could mean that. It could be that, let's say, hypothetically, Jaden Daniels gets named the starter against Florida State, and he's able to keep that job because he consistently looks better week in and week out. He's able to build upon some of the mistakes that he may have made, or he goes out there and just absolutely balls, and there's no reason to fix it if it ain't broke. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to for sure be kind of a back and forth battle throughout the season, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we see. That week one, Jaden Daniels the start. He has a great game. Week 2 against Southern, maybe takes a little bit of a step back. And I'm speaking completely hypothetically. And Garrett Nussmeier in practice starts to look like the better quarterback. Well, week 3, then maybe you might see Garrett be the starter. So it's going to be continually kind of nipping at each other's ankles. And I think that's a good thing overall, to have two really solid quarterbacks in your quarterback room. And yeah, you wouldn't want to see a talented guy sit on the bench, but it just gives you options. And it also adds different dimensions to your offense. Now, another kind of layer to this here, Brian Kelly has made it known that he does not want to run a 2-quarterback system. He made that very, very clear in the early stages of his tenure at LSU, in the first few months that he was here, when he was answering questions about the quarterback position. I want to say it was right around the spring game. He said, I've done it before, and I really don't want to do it again. And I would agree, having 2 quarterbacks that have different skill sets. I would say that Garrett Nussmeier has much more of that long ball, really talented arm kind of style, and Jaden Daniels has that as well, but is just way more talented on the ground. Well, you're going to have to run 2 kind of different offensive schemes to accommodate for both of those players. And you can do that leading up to a game. You can incorporate that into a game plan, and you can kind of adjust and capitalize on each of their strengths. However, you can't really adjust in the middle of a game and say, okay, now we're going to go, we're going to completely switch things up. We're going to completely change the game plan because Garrett Nussmeier is going in over Jaden Daniels. I don't think he wants to do that, but I think it's overall a very, very good thing. You got 2 good quarterbacks in your room, and you're going to be constantly rotating them. Maybe they're open to the idea, and I think that's really the key here. But again, Brian Kelly will take the podium at noon Central today, and I fully expect there to be a quarterback decision made in that press conference. So excited to hear about that. But coming up next, a couple more position groups on the offensive side of the ball that we got another look at over the weekend and also at the end of last week, and how that's shaping up. So we'll get into that coming up next. But before we do that, got a little bit of a PSA for everyone. So are you one of those people that think it's okay to drive stoned. I mean, like, what's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit. I mean, it's no big deal, right? But that's actually incorrect. The truth is your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. I mean, talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It is not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, CBD in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high and get a DUI. Well, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So kind of two position groups that I want to take a look at, the offensive line and the wide receiver unit as well. So first and foremost, let's focus on the wide receiver room because on Saturday, Malik Nabers was out of practice. He was kind of standing on the sidelines, didn't have his cleats on, had his helmet on, but was mainly out of practice. Wasn't running those with the ones, but Jack Bech was able to get out there. He's been out for a majority of practice. He's been dealing with shin splints. So he was out there. He was making a majority of his snaps with the ones, kind of filling in that slot role while Malik Nabers was absent and on the sideline. So good thing, pro, con. Pro, Jack Bech has been able to get out there, has been able to get in some work, and this week is so incredibly key to be able to get out there and get acclimated with both of these quarterbacks and kind of get acclimated into this system, actually be running it out there on the field. So that's a good thing. Jack Bech kind of been dealing with shin splints, has been on the sidelines, hasn't been 100%, has been out of practice, but hasn't been able to run at 100%. So he was a full go on Saturday. But con there, Malik Nabers was on the sidelines. And I don't think it's necessarily anything to be super concerned about at this point. He wasn't wearing a brace. He wasn't wearing anything that would indicate that he was dealing with a nagging injury that would sideline him throughout the week or on Sunday. But it's so incredibly key that both of those guys are healthy, that you're able to get enough reps with both of those guys, especially going into game week. I mean, this wide receiver room, albeit it has a lot of talent, it can't afford to have two of its most talented members in Malik Nabers and Jack Bech kind of in and out and rotating in and out with injury. So that's going to be something that I'll definitely keep an eye on moving forward here is the wide receiver position and the health of both Jack Bech and Malik Nabers. Because, I mean, Malik Nabers so far in camp has been outstanding. He absolutely has been emerging as that kind of 1-2 punch with Kayshon Boutte. So excited to see what Malik Nabers is able to do if he can just stay out there. And I'm sure Brian Kelly will be asked about why Malik Nabers was sidelined in practice. I can only hope that it's just a little thing that maybe it was just a day out of practice or maybe it was just, a day of rest for him. But take that day of rest, get back out there, and get ready to execute the game plan against Florida State on Sunday. But another thing here, and I wanted to look at that we've been monitoring a lot, is the offensive line. So before a couple weeks ago, the offensive line unit had been pretty stagnant, and it had been Will Campbell at left tackle, Tremont Shorts at left guard, Garrett Dellinger at center, excuse me, Miles Frazier at right guard, and Anthony Bradford at right tackle. And there hadn't been a ton of switch up until not this past Saturday, but last Saturday. We saw a little bit of switch up, and that Cam Wire, we saw him getting some reps at right tackle. Anthony Bradford was in at right guard. Garrett Dellinger remained at center. Miles Frazier moved to left guard from the right side, and Will Campbell was in at left tackle. So that those two positions that have kind of remained the same have been Will Campbell at left tackle and Garrett Dellinger at center. Now, I've addressed some of the concerns that I've had about Garrett Dellinger and that he'd been kind of muffing some snaps a bit because we saw last week Garrett Nussmeier drop a couple of snaps, and that was on Garrett Dellinger, and that was not on Garrett Nussmeier. And so I'm thinking to myself, how in the world can you have bad snaps in a game? Those are certain fundamental things that you don't get back. And it could really set you up for being in a really bad position if your center can't snap the ball. But Brian Kelly addressed that this past week, that Garrett Dellinger has been improving, and Garrett Dellinger just might be that guy.
With such a close battle at the quarterback position, is there a chance we would see both guys against Florida State, or are you just going to ride?
We're still moving some pieces around. I can tell you that the good part is Garrett Dellinger is really settled in at the center position. I think, it was it last week where I was pretty vocal about the snaps. He's really settled in nicely since that day and has taken ownership at that position and has been extremely consistent. So we feel really good there at the center position. We've been working Bradford at some guard position, but as you know earlier, he's played a lot of tackle. So that's given Cam Wire some opportunity there. I think what we're looking for is some key backup situations. I think we've got a pretty good sense of the 5, 6 guys, and now it's about getting that seventh, maybe 8th guy. But I think we feel pretty comfortable with knowing that we've got 7, 8 guys, and that's going to be our rotation.
So I heard that, and honestly, a weight lifted up off my shoulders because I have been concerned about this offensive line group for the past couple of months. If you've listened to this podcast, you've heard me say several times, I'm worried that this offensive line group might just be the weakest part of this LSU team. And then I hear about the bad snaps from Garrett Dellinger, and I thought, how in the world is this offense going to be able to capitalize on the amount of just sheer talent that it has if you can't even snap the ball, if you can't protect the quarterback? But there was Brian Kelly saying that, hey, Garrett Dellinger has really settled in. There's been just this growth of, the reliable center. And that's all I can ever ask for. Stay on the field and do your job and be reliable doing so. So like hearing that, and also like hearing that the rotation that we've seen so far in the offensive line group isn't because of, this guy can't do it. We've tried, we've had this experiment, but he can't play that position. So we're either going to move him out of the rotation or we're going to move him inside or to the other side. For example, Anthony Bradford was taking right tackle reps for a majority of camp, and then he moved inside to right guard. My question was, can he just not play right tackle? Is he just not good enough at that position? And they're moving him into right guard, or is it just an experiment to see who else can play that right tackle position? And Brian Kelly said, Anthony Bradford has majority played tackle, but he can play inside, he can play that guard position, and we're able to give Cam Wire a majority of those right tackle reps. And Cam Wire was taking right tackle reps on Saturday. So moving forward, do they play Anthony Bradford at right tackle and leave Cam Wire kind of in reserves to be able to plug and play into a tackle position just in case of injury, or in case, let's say Miles Frazier gets that starting right guard position, he goes down with injury, Anthony Bradford can move inside and Cam Wire can move in to right tackle. So those are all questions that I had, and I think that just answered by Brian Kelly saying, hey, we're just looking to see who can play where. We're looking to see, who can play on a fill-in basis. What are we working with here in terms of the offensive line, and who might not have a starting position but can plug in and play in, a couple weeks down the line just in case. And that's a good thing. This offensive line group at least has depth and versatility. You have a few guys that can play on the left side, on the right side, can play the tackle position, can play the guard position, and that's a good position to be in. But overall, it's looking like Garrett Dellinger is that one anchor on the offensive line, that he's going to be the center moving forward, and it looks like Will Campbell has been the consistent left tackle throughout camp. So you've got two of those anchors. That's their job. They stay in those positions, and then you've got some positions that are able to kind of move around as well. That's the wide receiver room and the offensive line room. A little bit concerned about Malik Nabers, but again, I'm not going to press the panic button. I'm not going to freak out. It was one day. I can't imagine it's anything too severe, but good to see Jack Bech out there as well, working with the ones. Now, coming up next, we saw a little bit of a taste of Florida State against Duquesne over the weekend. Some of my takeaways from there, what we should look for come Sunday. We'll get into that coming up next after a couple of these words. Well, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So we got to see Florida State over the weekend, and I'm going to be completely transparent with you. I went into this game, I had my notes out, I was writing down play-by-play. I was, excited to see what Florida State was going to do. And I was going to give a full breakdown for y'all today, a full breakdown of Florida State, what they looked like, who really looked strong, who needs some work, how LSU can win this game. And I'll have those notes for y'all throughout the week of how LSU can win this game, how LSU could lose this game. But the more and more I thought about it, and the more and more I watched that Florida State Duquesne game, I thought to myself, what are we really going to learn about Florida State playing Duquesne? Because I looked at it like, look, if Florida State goes out there and dominates Duquesne, like they did. Good. That's their job. It's Florida State and it's Duquesne. It's a team that wasn't even ranked top 25 at the end of the 2021 season in the FCS. I'm looking at Duquesne, a team that played Central Connecticut and Bryant and Merrimack and Virginia Lynchburg and St. Francis and Long Island University last year. And no disrespect to any of those teams. I mean, Duquesne went 9-3 in that span. But Duquesne is not a powerhouse university. Duquesne is an FCS program. And Florida State went out there and dominated them, and that's what they should have done. So I'm not going to look at that and say, oh my goodness, I'm so nervous about Florida State because they looked so good against Duquesne. Yeah, that's what they should do. They should look good against Duquesne. It's like watching some of these NFL preseason games that have been going on over the past couple of weeks. If you've got your starter, if you've got your ones going up against another team's 2s and 3s, then your team should dominate. That's how it should be. Like, I picked the Panthers to beat the Bills in the preseason this past week because Baker Mayfield was playing. And you know who was playing for the Bills? A bunch of backups. So that's how it should be, and that's how I viewed that game. Now, if Florida State went out there against Duquesne and struggled, maybe kept it a close game, maybe Duquesne took an early lead, then I would put more real estate in that, and I would feel even better about LSU going out and taking the field against Florida State because they struggled against an FCS Duquesne team that didn't even make postseason top 25 in the FCS. So that's kind of how I looked at it. I'm not going to waste my breath. I'm not going to waste your time breaking this entire game down because there's just not really that much to take away from a team that just really honestly didn't have a whole ton of competition. Now, I did see that viral photo of the Duquesne player wearing his pants all the way up here. Now, that's something to take away. That was something. The one thing that I will look at is exactly how Florida State won this game and how maybe we can take away from at least something tangible that we can take away from this Duquesne game looking forward to the game against LSU. And I look at this Florida State team that was able to put up 47 points and nearly 700 yards of offense, and very little of that 700 yards of offense and of those 47 points were put up by passing the ball. Florida State ran the hell out of that ball on Saturday. They had 3 running backs reach that 100-yard mark plus. Treshaun Ward leading the pack with 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, he is going to be one that I look at that LSU is absolutely going to have to stop on Sunday. Trey Benson also passed that 100-yard mark with 105 yards and a touchdown, and Lawrence Tuafili with 101 yards and a touchdown. And then I look at the passing game. Jordan Travis, their starting quarterback, who was in for majority of the game before they brought in some other backups to take some reps as well. He only had a 207 yards and did not account for a touchdown. Their only touchdown through the air was Tate Rodemaker, who had one. They didn't have a single touchdown through the air. What am I thinking? Tate Rodemaker had an interception. So just kidding. All of their touchdowns were on the ground. So that's how LSU is going to have to look at this game. The only tangible thing, at least that I take away from it, is you're going to have to stop the run. You are absolutely positively going to have to stop the Florida State run because they're not going to get it done through the air. If they're only putting up 200 yards through the air against Duquesne, they're not going to be able to do that against LSU either. So if you continue to put pressure on the quarterback and you stop the run, their offense, they're going to have any dimension to it. So that's really, I hate saying that. I hate saying, stop the run. That's all I can take away from it. They didn't have a single receiver breach 100 yards. And it's going to be significantly more difficult to do that against LSU. And now I can look at it a few different ways. Is that being incredibly conservative week 0 against a team that you know you're going to dominate? Is that letting the quarterbacks at least get a little bit acclimated, running the ball consistently, just so these quarterbacks can kind of get their legs underneath them and not have to go for these crazy deep ball situations. I don't know what the intention was there. Just playing it very, very conservatively and not letting too much out of the bag before you play LSU the next week. That absolutely could be the case. I don't know how much scheming Florida State did or how much they plan to do against Duquesne. They're saving a lot of it for LSU. But I do know for certain that these running backs are solid and they have a solid run game. So whether that they bring out more in the passing game against LSU on Sunday, I can only expect that will be their plan, especially if they're faced in long yardage situations. You're going to have to throw the ball. So I don't know what the scheme will be for LSU and how that will differ from Duquesne and how much more they'll bring out for LSU and how much they've kind of kept behind the vault against Duquesne, but that's kind of my biggest takeaway is they ran the ball well, and that's all I'm really going to take away from that. But we'll have a full Florida State breakdown throughout the week. We'll also have the host of Locked On Noles on the show, so we'll do a full crossover later on in this week. I'll give y'all my breakdown of how LSU can win this game and how LSU can lose this game. But coming up tomorrow, I'm going to have, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm going to have a full quarterback breakdown because I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that in just a few minutes, Brian Kelly will announce the starting quarterback for LSU against Florida State. But we'll monitor all of those situations. But that's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every day. You can get more on the SEC by making Locked On SEC your second listen. Everyday host Chris Gordy and the local experts of Locked On take you across the SEC in 30 minutes. Make Locked On SEC your second listen.